So, climate change is a naturally occurring process that has always happened on Earth. So, it's caused by things like Earth's orbital changes, solar variations, uh, ocean currents, volcanic eruptions, uh, and a couple other natural factors. But what's currently so alarming is the rate as to which the climate is changing right now. And so there is evidence that humans are having an effect on this rate of change. And so the thought is that the human use of fossil fuels, which we discovered and used as our primary source of energy since the Industrial Revolution a few centuries ago, are producing uh, greenhouse gases in the atmosphere, and it's resulting in a much faster change of climate. And so since 1880, the global temperature has risen by almost 2 degrees. And just in fact, in the past uh, 20 years, I think 19 of the world's hottest years have been recorded so far. So it does seem as though climate is changing at a faster pace. So even though climate change is natural, the rate as to which it's changing is not. And so in the past 800,000 years, CO2 levels have never been this high. And so human activity is increasing the CO2 levels at a much higher rate than what would naturally occur. So in comparison, something naturally like a volcano that would pump CO2 into our atmosphere usually generates less than 1 billion metric tons annually. And if you compare that to us, we are generating more than 35 billion metric tons annually. So that's a pretty big difference between something that naturally has an effect on climate change gradually over time compared to us. So, again, the rate of change is really what's alarming. And global temperature trends have always changed over time, but for it to change that quickly in such a short span of time is what is somewhat alarming. And so, what does, changes in climate look like, globally? So, the ocean temperatures, they're rising. The Greenland and Antarctic ice sheets are both decreasing in mass in an accelerating rate. Same with glaciers around the world. They're decreasing in mass, and they're decreasing more and more every year. Sea levels are rising. More extreme events like record high temperatures, extreme tropical storms, things like that. And also, with the way that this climate is changing so quickly, animals that can't quickly adapt to the change in their environment will face extinction. So obviously we're very adaptable, so I'm sure eventually we will be fine, but other animals or species will not. And there are some pretty common myths around climate change. So things like there's not a consensus between scientists, that they're always disproving each other about climate change and that things change. But overall, 97% of climate experts agree humans are having an effect on the rate of climate change. They're saying that is what the evidence is pointing towards. And you might hear from the more average person, it's still snowing outside. It's really cold. Obviously, our climate's not changing. This is what's always happened. But a couple of days of snowy weather or cold weather or even weeks, it doesn't represent the changes happening globally or the trends and the changes in weather. And some might say, like it's not urgent at the time, it'll hurt the economy, things like that, but eventually we will reach a tipping point to where there's only so much we can do to stop the process that's in motion. Not that we can stop it anyways, but the more extreme aspects of it. And the Intergovernmental Panel on Climate Change has actually forecasted a temperature rise of 2.5 to 10 degrees Fahrenheit over the next century. And so 2.5 to 10 degrees doesn't sound like a lot because you think like I guess just right in the middle of that, like 55 to 61 degrees. That's like 5 degrees difference. That's really not that big of a deal. But to put it in perspective, at the end of the last ice age, this is when parts of the United States, I think the northeastern parts, still had ice covering it. The average temperatures are only like 5 to 9 degrees colder than today. So that's a pretty big difference when you're talking like global temperature changes. But there are ways that we can try and curb our CO2 emissions. Invest in cleaner energy sources. It's like electric cars. Place an emphasis on renewable energies and transition from fossil fuels, which has been our primary energy source for these past couple hundred years. Um, so, again, climate change is something that's naturally occurred ever since the Earth has existed. Things change, but again, it's just the rate at which it's changing right now. Uh, that makes it, that points towards us having an effect on it. So, yeah, thank you.